Overcome the notion that you must be regular. It robs you of the chance to be extraordinary.
Hello and welcome to the ASPcast. Well, that was a quote from Jeremy Reeves, who's an entrepreneur who was interviewed on the podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. And the quote came from Uta Hagen, a German-American actress and drama teacher, born in 1919 in Germany. Anyway, I just love that because it kind of gives a good encouragement for Aspies to not worry about not being normal or conventional or regular. This is episode 7. I'm a little bit frustrated because I've been trying to get this episode cranked out before the end of July, and it just didn't happen. I guess partly because I've been having much more depression in the last couple months, and it's caused me to have less, mental spark and energy to go through this kind of stuff. And the other problem is it's hard to try and redescribe or revisit some of these experiences, some of which I'll be talking about today. And as an introduction, the ASPcast, again, is something that I thought might be useful for folks to just expose the kind of stuff that I've been through on my path through life thus far. I've had just so many things that I consider very devastating in terms of the outcome of social interactions, and I've just felt so bad in multiple types of situations, from work to, trying to be friends with people to trying to make friends with people in bars even. So I'm just hoping that this podcast in general can just be there to help folks, and maybe also help folks realize what I realized when I learned about Asperger's, which is that, even though there's all these devastating and painful situations that make you feel really bad about yourself, the situations being social interaction type situations of any type, even though you can go through those over and over, it's still not an indication that you're defective. That's what I was thankful to learning about Asperger's for, is that it's instead a natural form of human beingness for some people. I know that's a goofy way to say it, but it's great to know about Asperger's because it means you're not defective. It means you've just got an organic, natural situation going on in your brain that's a little unique. Nonetheless, I don't mean to discount the intensity of the types of social interaction problems that it can occur. And the social interaction leads to other problems too, health, and in my case, drinking and being subject to things that I should not have let happen to myself. In this episode, I want to give examples of feedback that I've gotten from people in social situations and work situations throughout my life. And these are things people have said to me. I shouldn't say feedback, because feedback makes it sound like it's invited. Things that have come back at me that have been memorable in general because they've been very painful to hear or painful to experience. So in some fashion, or they've been meaningful in a way that tells me there's something wrong with me. At least that's how they came across at the time. Now, hopefully, I would be able to hear those same statements from people and just realize that it relates to me being an Aspie rather than me being defective, because I certainly felt that way in the past when these statements came at me. So I'm going to go over things that I've had people tell me, and I'd be very curious if other folks had the same types of feedback at all. If so, feel free to give me an email. aspicast@gmail.com is the address. And I can't guarantee I'll be able to respond to everyone, but I definitely will read everything that comes in. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mention some of the very inappropriate things that I guess are natural within me. And I say inappropriate because some of the feedback that I've gotten has been due to me being inappropriate. And so I'm going to try and play some lighthearted, however, also vulgar things that I consider funny and exciting and unique, but other people consider extremely inappropriate. And I'll lead into that with one of the comments that I got from somebody. So here goes. In general, my social interaction in life has primarily been within the work environment, and that's because I've never had good luck in the romantic realm. So most of my social stuff has been, in companies with coworkers, and I've had different jobs. So in other words, some corporate, some small team things. And what I found, just as another background information, the blue collar environments that I've been in have been much more educational for me, because I get direct feedback from coworkers that can sound harsh, but actually they're being very respectful and honest because they're not talking about you behind your back. And in the other worlds that I've been in, corporate environments or bigger companies, people end up talking about me behind their back, and I don't realize it. And in one case, I didn't know it for 2 years or so, after leaving that company, and I was told that I was notorious for wanting everything my way. And that just freaked me out, because I never thought I was, notorious for anything. I thought I was just a good worker. Anyway, and I never would have thought I wanted things my way. I just assumed actually that everything was supposed to be done the right way. And I guess because of my position in the company, I felt comfortable saying when things were being done incorrectly. And unfortunately, people took that as me saying it's supposed to be done my way. And I'm not disagreeing with how it came across. I just didn't know that. And I certainly didn't mean that. I was just more worried about my paycheck and everybody else's paycheck when people would do stuff that clearly was against logical stuff that anybody on the outside would look in and say, here's a thing that this salesperson is doing that's going to cost us potential revenue. Anyway, I think I've visited that in other episodes, and I don't want to harp on it, other than to just say that, the feedback I got from that experience was like 2 years after leaving that company. And what it means is I just didn't have a chance to hear or learn and fix myself, while I was at the company. And I guess that's why feedback and comments from other people, especially as an ASPE, I guess, may be really important to take seriously any chance you can, anytime you can get that type of thing, or anytime you hear feedback. So anyway, let me go through some of the things that I've heard that left a real mark on me in ways that I guess either were fairly devastating or at least left a strong impression in my mind, because maybe I didn't have any clue why somebody would, have these opinions about me. So from a long time ago, or maybe my first job onward, because I didn't have that many friends growing up, still don't. I would have people telling me, "Why do you have that evil smile on your face?" And for me, I didn't know what to do about that, because first of all, I wasn't having any, bad opinions or evil thoughts or anything, that I could imagine being the least bit evil. But I would just be walking around the office, let's say, maybe I go get a drink of water and a coworker says, hey, Steve, what's that evil smile on your face? And the thing is that happened with numerous people at more than one job. And maybe they thought, maybe smirk, I don't know if that word came through or not, but I didn't know what to do. Obviously something was unusual and probably not right, because why would they say evil smile? That just doesn't sound right. At the same time, nobody was really saying it in a way that was angry at me or telling me I was doing something wrong, but it sure made me feel like I was doing something wrong because it kept coming at me. And part of me wonders, maybe some people interpreted it worse than an evil smile and just never told me. Unfortunately, it's common, I guess, especially in Caucasian culture, for people, I say American Caucasian culture, I should say, for people to not want to, be forthright and say things in front of somebody's face that might be taken negatively. And that always sort of pissed me off. And I've had much more appreciation for folks who can just say it like it is, because then what might be hampering you in the social realm. Now, I don't know if this is related to the evil smile thing, but I did have a boss who said one time that he can't read me. And I don't remember the situation there, but he was just trying to explain that he wasn't sure what I was thinking or feeling in conversations with me. So he said he can't read me. And I had no clue what he was talking about. Why would he need to read me? What does it mean to want to read somebody? Why is that important? I guess I must have an expressionless face or something that wasn't making him understand if I was understanding what he was asking me to do or agreeing with what he was asking me to do as the boss. Really just didn't know what to do with that statement, other than it sounded at the time, and still, lastingly does, that there's something, I hate to say it, something wrong with me, that, that he could read everybody else except me. Therefore, there must be something, problematic about me. So, this is one more piece of feedback that I just didn't know what to do with. That plus the evil smile plus so many other things, it all adds up over time to make you wonder what the hell's wrong with yourself. Now let's see. Looking through my notes here, I also went to a bar one time and somebody walked by me and they said, "Smile, handsome." And I also didn't understand that, and I guess it relates to the can't read me and the evil smile thing. I didn't feel like I was sad. I may have been nervous because it's scary. Actually, it was a club, loud disco music and all that, not necessarily just a bar. And I was wondering, why would somebody tell me to smile? It was nice that he said handsome. Oh my God, I just explained that it was a guy. Anyways, yes, it was that kind of club. Anyway, I didn't know why somebody would tell me to smile, because I wasn't feeling sad, and I wouldn't expect somebody to think I wasn't smiling. So I guess what that told me is that the expression on my face doesn't necessarily convey what I'm feeling or thinking. And that reminds me of a TV show that I may have mentioned on another episode, where they were profiling a surfing champion who had Asperger's, and it was mentioned that he doesn't really smile. And so maybe this is a part of the thing with Asperger's is the facial expressions aren't there like they are maybe with other people, and I guess because of the feedback that I've gotten that all surrounds me either smiling or having an evil smile or people can't read my face, it indicates that there's some real important stuff going on that I have no clue about that helps lubricate the interactions between people, the social interactions. Anyways, I also have been very jealous of other people in a very intense way, and as a result, I'm always, even maybe to this day, jealous of how much more, I don't know, power or success is had, at least in my mind, by people that are good looking. And I used to have a really hard time with what I consider a real cognitive disconnect in terms of how could it possibly be that some people have a better time in life just by accidentally being born in a way that makes them very good looking. And so as a result of that, I would find myself staring at people who were really attractive, not because I was after them, but because I was so frickin' jealous and I wondered what it was like to be them, and I would just sort of stare at them. And I didn't even know I was doing that much of the time. So the reason I'm mentioning it now is that was another piece of information that I got one time. After I had gone to some party, somebody told me afterwards that people thought I was very strange because I was staring at everybody. And I didn't know that I was doing that. And I guess, in retrospect, sure, it would have made me quite a, strange person to everybody else, to where they might not want to even interact with me. So, making it even more problematic socially, And I was scared to death at the time, as well as staring at people, because I go into this party and I had no clue what I was supposed to do. But I was invited because it happened to be my birthday, and the party was for somebody who had a birthday on the same date. And he invited me to participate in this sort of birthday party as another person with that same birthday. But found out later I was staring at people. So again, I don't know how to deal with that because it was. The staring came from a feeling deep within of real gut-wrenching jealousy and a non-understanding of how nature and life could give somebody good looks, and that might therefore make them have an easier time or have more connections with other people. And this also sort of relates to Elliot Roger, who's the guy who shot up Isla Vista, California, I guess in May of 2014. He had some serious jealousy of other people in a sexual way. I think he was very freaked out, I think, because he would see guys having girlfriends, and he would assume that they were having, good sex life. And so he would do two things, I guess. He would go and he'd made these YouTube videos, that he would be talking and sort of discussing how he felt, and he would be talking about how upset he was that, certain people had girlfriends and he didn't. Now the sad thing about him was he, I guess, very narcissistic. He thought he was hot stuff, and he was saying in some cases, racist and derogatory things about other people, and saying, well, how could they get, girlfriend? They're not as good looking as he was, and therefore it's just not fair. I guess I'm saying that I understand the feelings that he was probably having about the not fairness and not having any control over how to fix it or path forward. And, and he also said something about having to go to places where there weren't other people walking around with girlfriends, just so he didn't get that jealous feeling. And I guess I can acknowledge that jealousy, if it's the same as what I felt at his age, he was 22 when all this horrible stuff happened. It's a gut-wrenching feeling of jealousy, and I guess that gut-wrenchingness just also led me to stare at other people and just wonder what their life was like, and wonder what it was like to be them, because they maybe, got to have sex and I didn't. So anyway, I'm mentioning this because it's all this stuff sort of really came back strongly after the Elliot Roger tragedy, because he was so on target with how I've used to feel, and I thought I had put all those things behind me, and apparently I didn't, because it just totally, his YouTube videos and his manifesto, which was a long document called My Twisted Life that he wrote and sent to people just before he went on his shooting rampage. God, it just so right on target with the stuff that I had been feeling. And I know I talked about this in the last episode, but he was diagnosed with Asperger's, and he apparently had, people trying to help him with social skills. So I guess, maybe he would have been on a path towards getting, to a more stable spot, but didn't happen, and unfortunately some innocent people lost their lives as a result of his intense feelings and frustrations and jealousy. So jealousy is a really powerful thing. The other thing I've been told, that I guess in subtle ways that I'm don't have tact, and I tried to sort of own that and acknowledge that in one case at a particular job, but it's partly because it's really easy for me to see when things are not going to work right in a certain process at a company, or a certain interaction that somebody might have with a potential customer. So that was feedback that I'd gotten as well. And in one case, somebody said, Steve has an honesty problem. And I didn't quite understand what that was. It was said in a meeting. And fortunately, the CEO of the company piped in and said, well, no, Steve is actually quite good. And I think what was trying to be said was that I'm a little too direct and straightforward and honest, when in some cases you got to be not necessarily forthright, but maybe sweet talking or something like that. And I guess I have been able to fake the sweet talking in the past. It's definitely hard, but I've been able to do it and bring about sales as a result. Another comment that I've had from two different bosses at two different companies: why are you so negative? And I never even understood that I was being negative. And again, I think this is related to me feeling like it's okay to, honestly say when something is not working right in some process. And unfortunately, when I say process, it usually means other people and how they're doing their job. I guess part of it too is because I had a somewhat extra authority than just being a grunt worker in the various jobs that I've had, because I was always, promoted for doing such a good job. And so as I got promoted, I guess I got a little more big-headed or something. And I felt comfortable explaining or saying that things weren't being done right. But I certainly never felt like there was some reason to have, extra care behind the words. And I hate to say it, but I still don't understand it, because why would somebody take offense? I mean, everybody's trying to work so that they can get a paycheck, or maybe get a bigger paycheck. And if there's something that you're doing that could harm or risk that money coming in, why wouldn't that be something that everybody would just put on the table? And why would emotion be involved in it? I guess now I understand that, I have to take it as a rule to apply before I open my mouth. That, I have to think, what am I going to say? And is it possibly going to be taken as a insult, or me telling somebody they're doing something wrong, when in reality I'm just trying to be on board with saying something that probably everybody would benefit from when it comes to making things work right in a company, and especially in a startup company, which is where a lot of this stuff happened, where we need to earn money, and everybody has the potential to hurt or improve the prospect of earning money. So I guess I just, had a lot of these people saying, why am I so negative? And the people the two different people that said this were, positions of authority over me. So probably there was plenty of people, lateral to me or below me in the corporate hierarchy at the time that probably had the same opinion and just didn't say it, because they, you wouldn't necessarily say that to a lateral coworker. Anyway, it's just surprising. I had a client, because of all this negativity and me not having tact, I guess, that reduced my chances of feeling like I could be productive in new and different companies. So I did end up trying to go on my own, still am, and I emphasize trying. So as being on my own, it's good and bad. I mean, the good is I'm forced to learn the rules that it takes to not piss people off. Otherwise, I won't have any clients. And it's a really long, hard process. But I did have a client who I felt that I hadn't interacted with that much. And she said, I'm very literal in one particular conversation. And I totally didn't understand that at the time. And I'm still not sure if I understand that. But I also heard that it's an ASPE trait to be very literal. And I guess that just means, part of it makes me think it's about being honest, but it's also probably about taking things literally. Maybe if somebody says something to you and you don't sense that there's an alternate meaning. And I guess that's a, common trait with ASPEs. And I may have mentioned in the past that I really love the TV show called Monk, M-O-N-K. I've got a link to it. You can get CDs or DVDs, I guess. It's a show that ended maybe in the late 2000s. I don't know, 2008. I think it went on for like 8 seasons. Anyway, Monk wasn't acknowledged to be an ASPE, but the traits that he exhibited were a lot of ASPE traits, including taking things literally in at least one episode. And these are just, random little things that are sort of sprinkled into the writing of the show. And that's one of the reasons I really love the show. But the idea of being very literal, again, when I was told that I'm very literal, I didn't quite understand it. And I also, at the same time, appreciate that I think I saw what it is like in a sort of a fun way in the TV show Monk. anyway, if you're interested, videos.aspicast.com. That's redirects to a Amazon affiliate store where I put up the monk videos, DVDs, and some other stuff. Also, and I don't know if this is related to Asperger's or not, but I seem to have a lot of up and down emotion, or maybe bipolar situation. I'm not sure. But I was told one time, that somebody was trying to tell me that I was just blabbing too much. And unfortunately, he didn't say it literally. All he said was step away from the caffeine, because I was having a cappuccino at the time and I was in a group setting and I was just talking like crazy, I guess, to the point where it was maybe obnoxious. I'm not sure. But I guess this sort of relates to the thing about being literal. I mean, step away from the caffeine is not direct enough for me to understand what he was really trying to say. And it took him saying that in different, different occurrences of this one group that I was trying to be a part of. It was sort of like a computer nerds group, social group. And again, this was like 19 years ago. But I think I realized only after maybe 3 months of him telling me this same type of thing, what he was really trying to say, which was that I get a little too hyped up. And I think the reason I get hyped up is, it's just so freaking hard for me to be social. And I guess once I get some sort of energy flowing, it just starts flying out like crazy. And that's not a good thing either. So I guess I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. In other words, the don't part is most of the time when I'm too scared to go out and be social. And then the do part is when I do get social, I end up trying to compensate or something with some caffeine, or more recently with some alcohol. And then that just perks me up so much that I guess I overdo it. And I'll give some examples of that shortly. One other interesting thing that I was told, and again, it wasn't direct, unfortunately, was that I send really long emails, and I never knew that was a problem, but somebody was repeating this to me because my boss had told him he was like a lateral to my boss in the company, and he mentioned how I send really long emails, and I didn't know that was problematic or different or unusual. I just thought it was the right way to interact with my boss so that he knew everything that I was doing. And this was in a sort of a high-end tech company, maybe around the year 2000. So that kind of freaked me out. And I since then have tried to think more about that. And I guess I was lucky that I heard that feedback, because what I've done since then is paid a little more attention to any statements that I see about how to be most successful in email communication. And there's guidelines out there or recommendations that some people have put forth over the years about, how to make sure your email is fully understood or fully read, and in ways like, don't be too long, or don't say this many sentences, or don't have big, huge paragraphs or something like that. At the same time, for me, the process of writing was always the process of thinking, and I always wanted to make sure I thought through everything before I said it to my boss, so I would end up with these long emails. And come to find out, that also wasn't the right way to interact. So in a way that the boss had commented, I guess, sort of behind my back to his lateral person, another boss, So anyway, it's just that's another thing where I didn't know I was doing something that I guess wasn't considered as appropriate as I thought. And that kind of hurts. That just adds into everything else. When you get enough of these types of comments flying at you, it just starts adding up, and you start getting more and more dejected or devastated about, how can you possibly do something right in a situation that involves other people, and then what do you do? So, for me, I guess you get to the point where, I go to work and I go home. And I spent way too many years going home alone, and there was 2 times I had relationships for about 4.5 years each, and those were really wonderful. But that's, I guess, the majority of my life has not been with a relationship and not dating, because I don't know how. Or if I do try, things are a little too intense for me to understand what the right thing to say is or to do, and all that. And of course, I don't feel good going into any kind of dating situation because I've had all these negative feedbacks coming at me. Another feedback, I was just thinking, I was having a conversation with somebody, and what happened was I was talking about something that I thought was fairly innocuous, and then all of a sudden this guy says, and it was me and 2 business owners is what it was, and successful business owners. And I thought I was participating as an adult, and then one of them says, I'm very uncomfortable with the situation. If the subject doesn't change, I'm going to have to leave. And that just totally floored me in a very tragic, depressing, embarrassing way. So anyway, that one really stuck with me and hurt, and really made me feel defective. The only good thing about that is it happened after I had understood about Asperger's. So I realized that whatever I was doing, and I think it turned out to be perseveration at the time, that was the cause. In other words, I was harping on something and I didn't realize I was, and I still don't understand how a conversation could be that painful to be a part of. But the negativity that I generated in this other person, just so out of the blue and shocking and intense as well. Especially because he was the type of person I wish I could be similar to in terms of successful business person. And I thought it would be nice to be able to have somebody like that as a friend, but I came out of that just totally feeling inferior and not at all able to be on that same level. And I, again, hate that situation of not, the lack of being able to be, somewhat equal. Just like I used to hate the fact that there was people that were good looking and bad looking. And I always felt on the bad looking side. So at the same time, I guess as I got older, I realized people had found me attractive in the past, and I didn't realize it. And one thing that happened within the last year that I thought was funny and sad was somebody said, I'll bet you were attractive when you were young, or I bet you were really attractive when you were young. So that was a shocker, because I definitely don't feel grown up. I'm in my late 40s, but definitely don't feel grown up. So for somebody to say that surprised me. But anyways, another big thing that somebody said to me, and this was in a bar, somebody that I had, met, I don't know, 8 years ago, and who ended up being sort of a really good bar friend because he had a lot of experiences that I was interested in hearing about, and he seemed to be interested in telling me and talking to me about things. And we had some things in common. He had lived in India. I've done work in India. And he knew how to, read and write a few things in Hindi, and I found that very intriguing. And we had great conversations about that. And the more comfortable I got with him, I guess the more I must have let out inappropriatenesses. And I always thought it was me being funny and unique and saying things that might be, interesting because they're funny or make me a more fun person to be around. And it turned out to be the opposite. So the comment that I got from him was, at one point, you're not endearing yourself to anyone. Now, being very literal, I took that as I'm not endearing myself to anyone. What I think he was trying to say is I was making people not like me. But that message never got through to me except maybe 6 months later, after he kind of dropped away, as most potential friends have done, throughout my social life. And, it just took me a long time to understand what he meant. Now, part of the reason I think he was saying that is because I would, unfortunately, rely on alcohol to be social in his presence and in other people's presence in this one bar. And it was kind of like a pub that people would go to after work. And, not any kind of like nasty pickup bar or anything. But I would say things that I guess were entirely vulgar, and that I thought were very funny. And I just thought it would be fun to be unique and considered funny in my own silly little vulgar way. But apparently I was making people dislike me because of my vulgarities. And I guess I can understand that. In other words, here I was in a place where theoretically everybody was an adult, and I guess I was probably acting like a 8-year-old or 12-year-old, because I certainly had a potty humor or bathroom sense of humor when I was, up through age 13 or 14. And I think that stuff comes flying out now, even as an adult, as soon as I start to drink a little bit. I guess that's what happened. So I guess because of me being vulgar, I had a friend who I would talk to all the time at this one pub/bar. And it was in Washington, D.C., actually. And that may have a little bit to do with the reactions. But I was told I'm not endearing myself to anyone. And I didn't know what to make of that because I didn't feel the need to endear myself. It just, in a very literal sense, why would somebody want to go and endear themselves? Unless you were in pursuit of some, romantic conquest. End result, I think probably 6 months or a year later, I realized he was trying to say that I'm pissing people off or I'm making people not like me or disrespect me. And when I realized that that made me realize a big, I don't know if you want to call it a mistake or what on my part. But it was sort of understandable in retrospect because he was another one of these folks that sort of vanished from my life, not wanting to deal with me too much. And I guess I just didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing. I just, I don't know. They don't physically cause pain, so I can't figure out why people would get, upset or disrespect somebody for saying certain things. At the same time, I should probably follow my own understandings of this stuff and realize that I probably do, judge people significantly on their words. But I guess I just don't, maybe that's my big issue. I don't see words as having as much relevance when it comes to enjoying the company of another person, or I don't judge another person as much because they're just words. And anyways, so here's where it gets awkward. So if you're squeamish or under the age of 50, please turn off this podcast now. In college, somebody was telling me, a good friend was telling me, how he had heard a woman driving by a sorority, and this was in California, and the woman screamed out to some other women maybe on the front yard of the sorority house, I want to lick your pussy. And I just thought that was the funniest frickin' thing. So I kind of, that for some reason stayed in my mind, and I love to just sort of pretend I was a woman in my falsetto voice and say that same phrase. And 30 years later, I'm still laughing about that phrase. I don't know why, but just the thought of a 20-something woman screaming out the car window to another 20-something woman, that phrase, I don't know, it just made me laugh. So I somehow have said that, and I guess I kind of said things in that similar regard in the bar, and of course the alcohol may have, or definitely, lubricated my ability to say things of that nature. And I probably was doing it a lot because maybe perseveration or whatever. I just thought it was funny to hear. And of course it probably was turning people off, and hence the not endearing myself to others comment. But I do wish he had just said, hey, that's a very vulgar phrase to a lot of people, even though it may not be to you, even though you think it's funny. If you say that, what happens is other people's natural reaction is, bad. And in fact, the reaction is bad against me. And that's the other thing that really sort of threw me for a loop in the long term. And I credit this one guy who told me I wasn't endearing myself to others. I credit him significantly with explaining something to me, which was sort of a rule that I could go by. And here's what it is. If I would say something, to somebody else to be funny and it was vulgar, I knew in my mind that I had no bad intent. So I would always get very freaked out as to why would somebody else judge me, because they should know I don't have any bad intent. I'm just trying to be funny. And why would somebody judge me, and why would that judgment on the other person's part weigh more than my side, my bad intent? And I guess that's been a thing all along, is, maybe as I've lost friends and made enemies, to this day, I don't understand exactly what they were thinking, because I never had any bad intent. If I do or say something, I'm trying to be funny or friendly or whatever, and the other person interprets it in such a bad way, and this has happened, and in a repetitive manner where there's a clear pattern. It's this bizarre, I say, cognitive disconnect. It's a fundamental not understanding, and in a way that I feel strongly that it shouldn't have to be the way it is, where that other person gets upset or gets turned off. Anyway, so this person who, said I wasn't endearing myself to others, he said that in practical terms, and this is where it really helped me, I like practical terms. I can adhere to that. In practical terms, what really depends is what the other person hears. It doesn't matter what your intent is. It's the effect of your statements that, matters in the outcome of a particular situation. And maybe this is obvious to people. It just never was to me, because maybe I'm self-centered aspie. I don't know. I just never understood why, somebody would take it bad if I did something that wasn't right. I thought they should know I'm have no bad intent. And here I am harping on it, perseverating in this podcast right now. That's how fundamental it was to me. But I really liked that rule. I mean, that statement as a rule that I could take into my brain and just sort of, I don't know, soothe the frustration and the incongruity of people getting upset when I had no bad intent. So Anyway, I'm going to play right now two things that are embellishments on the phrase that I thought was so funny that one girl screamed out the car window to another girl. Or, as I should say, woman, not girl, because I had a radical lesbian feminist man-hater friend in college that would always call me on that phrase girl. She would just, within a split second, criticize me. And by the way, she called herself a radical lesbian feminist. Other people added the word man-hater on top of that because it was just kind of funny. Anywho, I don't talk to her either because she got really upset at me for perseverating and asked me to leave her house one time. That was like 5 years ago. And I, again, didn't know why that reaction came from her. But she wrote me a letter later saying she just doesn't like how I keep harping on stuff. And she didn't like it because I used to apparently do it in college and was still doing it as an adult. Anyway, and again, it's something with the perseveration. I don't see why it matters. I'm just little old me. I mean, why would people get upset? Just words. It's not somebody poking you with a pin. So, as you can tell, it's a kind of a big deal for me. So I've embellished that phrase in musical terms, and I've added made it even more vulgar by adding the terms boy and juicy. So I have to apologize, and if you're under 50 now, it may be too vulgar for you. So please, viewer discretion is advised here. All right, so here goes. The first one is a auto-tune from an app on the iPad or iPhone, and the second one is a rap with auto-tune. Okay, so I did these literally within the last year to 2 years. I don't know if I should be embarrassed, but I probably should. So here goes.
I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy. Juicy boy pussy. I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy. Juicy boy pussy. I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy. Juicy boy pussy.
Okay, sorry about that. And it gets worse. Here goes a rap version.
Your juicy boy pussy is what I wanna lick. Now lick, now lick. I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy. Your juicy boy pussy is what I wanna lick. Now lick, now lick. I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy. Your juicy boy pussy is what I wanna lick. Now lick, now lick. I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy. Your juicy boy pussy is what I wanna lick. Now lick, now lick, now lick. I'll lick your juicy boy pussy. I wanna lick your juicy boy pussy.
Okay, so now everybody knows what's inside my brain. And I'm going to just sort of leave it at that. But feel free to send me your comments and tell me to just either quit or get more vulgar. One of those I played to boyfriend of a niece last Christmas. And I realized, he was just learning about our family by dating my niece. And boy, he must have had quite a strange opinion of me. And I attribute part of that to the damn wine. But anyway, literally on Christmas Day night after dinner, I thought I would play the first one, and to him in the presence of my niece. So it probably was even worse. Anyways, okay, just a couple more feedback items. And again, this is just in case folks have similar thoughts. So maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. Let me know if you've got similar, experiences. One of them, and it kind of might relate to perseveration, but a friend told me that I always want to win. And that really confused me because I couldn't put together any answers in my mind about me wanting to win any conversations. I can see in retrospect that the perseveration issue, if you harp on something, it can sound like you're trying to win. I never thought of it as that, and I can see why always wanting to win in a conversation would be obnoxious. But I can't match that against anything that I've said. I can't match it. And I think it's because the intent on my side wasn't there, or maybe the intent was so subconscious that I didn't, think about it. Or maybe my intent is that I always do want to win, and it's such a, background frame of reference that I don't notice that I'm doing that. And so the goal is, I've got these things happening, and I can see it's obnoxious if somebody's, entire conversations with somebody else involves one of them trying to always come out on top. That would, that adds to my complete confusion about how to potentially have a good future relating to other people and having friends and having relationships. If you can't even sense you're doing this stuff, what the hell do you do? Where's the future? It's, if you can't sense it, how can you control it? How can you do it? And even if you can sense it and you don't understand, why does somebody else think it's bad? So all I can do is try to hear these things and apply rules and hopefully catch myself and apply the rules before these things come out of my mouth, whatever they are. And in the case of trying to win, it's not like you're saying certain words. It's the whole nature of your interaction, right? So it could be tone of voice. It could be perseveration and just harping on a certain thing. But the person that did say that, we're not friends anymore, he just got so fed up and he would, tell me before he sort of disconnected from me, before he said we're done as friends, he almost hung up on me on the phone. And it was just because I was bringing up stuff, and he would say, I'm not going to talk about that. Anyway, it was just really hurt in the brain because I didn't know why he was doing it. I didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing. And when you're not doing something wrong and they accuse you of something wrong, for me, that drives me freaking crazy. It makes me upset, almost upset at the other person, because why should you accuse me of something that I didn't intend, or I don't even sense having any negativity within it, within the phrase, within the topic, whatever, So I guess words and things that I can't sense have so much power to other people that I don't quite perceive, Anyway, it's an ongoing thing, and I'm always wondering how the hell I'm supposed to go through life in a way that might eventually make me thrive. I'm sort of thinking about that term these days is thriving. If subtle things are just really pissing people off to the point where they will get mad at me. The one sort of positive thing, though, I can say is that I am obviously important enough to other people to generate the anger inside of them at my words or at my approach or at my attitude. So they probably had some hopes for being friends with me, I'm going to guess. And otherwise they wouldn't get so upset. They would just discard me without really thinking. At the same time, I would say there's plenty of people that probably would and do discard me without any thinking. It's easy for them to sort of walk away because maybe I don't have importance and I'm just one more person that's a little bit nuts or something. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be connected with other people. I don't want to just be, obnoxious and lose friends. I want to have good relationships, and I want to enjoy things together with other people. Because and Elliot Roger even said this: is if you have to go through various experiences alone, it seems to mean a lot less. Or at the very least, it means a lot when you can experience something good with another person, And that could be as simple as just, seeing something on TV and laughing together in the presence of another person. Okay. One thing I used to be told a lot in college, and I'm still kind of afraid of it now with this podcast actually, is I was told I repeat myself a lot. And to the point where people would say, "Why are you telling me this again? You already told me this." I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm just trying to have conversations with people, and if I repeat myself, why is that a problem? Maybe, anyway, for some reason, it makes other people upset. And it's just words. It's not a frickin', pinprick or baseball bat to the head or anything like that, but it generates frustration and sometimes, anger and negativity on their part coming flying back at me. I don't get it. At the same time, the guy who I spent a lot of time chatting with over the years in this bar, he told me one time that he understands that I've been repeating myself, and I think he'll tell me. But I don't get the problem with it. But now, of course, after people telling me this and telling me in some cases with a little bit of anger, I'm very worried about it. And to the point where I realized in this particular episode of this podcast, I'm saying things that I've said in previous ones, and I'm trying to couch that or give some frame of reference that I am aware of that may be happening. But I wish it wasn't something bad. I wish I could just talk and people wouldn't get upset or wouldn't get frustrated. And I guess that's the summary of all this stuff. That would be the summary of this podcast and the summary of my life. I wish I could just talk like I assume everybody else does. And knowing internally, strongly in my mind, that I don't have any negative thoughts most of the time that I'm talking, I would just like it if I could just talk to people and they wouldn't get frustrated or leave or whatever. And that hasn't happened throughout my life. And the more negative feedback I get, the more it piles up and accumulates, and then makes me just really scared to even try to have a conversation with somebody. And guess what? The only way I can at this point is by, loosening up with a glass of wine. And then I feel so good and people seem to respond to me in certain ways that I have another glass and then another, and then that gets really bad because I lose track of how many I've had, because the good feeling is so, I don't want to say orgasmic, but so much different from all of the negative feedback that I've gotten over life that I cherish that good feeling that can result from interacting with people while I am inebriated. It has such value to me that I just want to keep it going. And that ends up meaning having more wine. And then in some cases, then I get vulgar or I do even more stupid stuff. And that might be a subject for another episode. But I guess I just want to say that one of the things I've wondered is alcoholism a problem for Aspies? And if so, I can see why, because the accumulated effect of a lifetime of negative feedback from just talking to people, is huge. And if you can escape that for even an hour, it is so addictive and so positive a feeling to have people really be engaged with you verbally in a non-negative way. That's what happens when I'm drinking. And it's not good, even though it sounds good. So please don't go trying to replicate what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's a lot of interconnection between good and bad, and it all seems to come down to how I'm talking to people and their feedback towards me and their willingness or unwillingness to stay connected with me based on what I say. All right. that's about it. This is, believe it or not, the 5th attempt at trying to do this podcast, and there's probably even more stuff that I put in earlier attempts that I didn't get to put in this one. So I'm going to sort of call this one done at this point, and then hopefully not repeat myself too much in future episodes. But anyways, I love the positive feedback I've gotten from folks by email, so definitely want to just mention that to folks. Thank you so much. And really intelligent, well thought out emails and positivity coming at me. That's unusual for me. Okay, thanks a lot, and hopefully we get another episode within a month or less, unlike this time. Bye-bye.
There's some brown juice in the bowl. There's some brown juice in the head. Brown ring on the rim. It looks like really loose motion. Show me your motion. Come on, show me your motion. Show me your motion. It looks like really loose motion. All head water run dry. Got no way to flush it down. All head water run dry. Got no way to flush it down.
Well, I'm really sorry about that. I just threw it in there. That's me putting my own words over the Boney M song called Brown Girl in the Ring, which itself is kind of a bizarre song. Not entirely sure what it's supposed to mean, but it was a real popular song from the real popular group Boney M from disco days, I guess, in the 70s. And I hate to say it, but I did this one January of 2014. So totally nuts. Only a few people have heard it, though, so now I'm exposing myself. All right, thanks again for your patience and listening, and I'm sorry for this, but part of me is afraid that this might be the real me. Talk to you later.